Before we start, a big thank you to today's sponsor, me. I've teamed up with Makeshape to create this little plush version of myself. It's made with an ultra soft fleece exterior and looks rather dashing if I do say so myself. The plush is only available for 21 days, so do make sure you get yours as soon as possible. These are limited edition, so go ahead and click the link in the description or pinned in the comments and pre-order yours today. Thank you. And now, onto the video. On the 8th of December 1980, John Lennon was shot and killed. The former Beatles' death shook the world, with fans mourning the loss of a 20th century icon, many unable to accept that Lennon had been killed. His murderer, Chapman, has given a number of reasons for the killing, ranging from a desire to be famous to inspiration from the book Catcher in the Rye. As John Lennon lay dying in the vestibule of the Dakota building, Chapman even took out a copy of the book and began reading it, as if it were the natural response to such an act. In today's video, we will be looking at John Lennon's last day alive, the motivations of Chapman, and the fallout from the assassination that shook the world. Following the breakup of the Beatles, John Lennon focused on his solo career, working with the Plastic Ono band he formed with his second wife, Yoko Ono. Lennon spent much of his time in America, notably in New York. When Lennon and Ono fell pregnant, John took a break from music and focused for a time on raising their son Sean. But by 1980, Lennon was back writing again and recording music with his wife. During the last few years as a Beatle, Lennon had drawn attention for his anti-war stance, notably against the Vietnam War, and for Britain's role in the Nigeria-Biafra Civil War. As a solo artist, his songs such as Power to the People, Give Peace a Chance, and Imagine cemented Lennon's revolutionary views on politics and as a peace activist. But to Chapman, Lennon was little more than a phony. Chapman had long considered himself a fan of both the Beatles and of John Lennon, but he found it increasingly difficult to reconcile Lennon's calls for a world without possessions and calls for a collective action with the lavish lifestyle and amassing of so much wealth. Chapman drew a comparison between himself and Holden Caulfield, the angst-ridden protagonist of Catcher in the Rye. In the book, the teenage Caulfield rails against the adults in the world who he sees as phonies, the ones who are hypocrites and the ones who are making the world a worse place. Whilst he settled on killing John Lennon as a target for his assassination, Chapman had considered others. He had thought about killing Paul McCartney, Elizabeth Taylor, and Ronald Reagan. He would later admit that he planned to murder a famous person in order that he might become famous himself. He settled on Lennon in part due to convenience, feeling it would be more viable for John to be the target. Chapman had grown up in a violent household. His father would regularly beat his mother and show little affection to the young Chapman. He held a number of jobs such as a camp counselor, security guard, and assisted refugees from Vietnam. In 1978, Chapman would go on to travel the world, and during this time, he would start a relationship with his travel agent, Gloria Abe. The couple married the following year and lived together in Hawaii. It was in 1979 that Chapman's mental state appeared to deteriorate. He began to drink heavily and became obsessive with both John Lennon and Catcher in the Rye. In October of 1980, Chapman purchased a .38 caliber handgun and flew to New York with the intention of killing Lennon. However, he was not able to carry out the act. A chance viewing of the film Ordinary People appeared to change his course. He returned home and confessed his dark intentions to his wife Gloria. He claimed that he no longer harbored such desires and that he would throw the gun into the sea. This, however, was not the end of the matter, and Chapman soon again descended into obsessive and erratic behaviors. In December later that year, he made a return visit to New York, having reignited the wish to kill Lennon and having never disposed of the gun. For a few days, Chapman stalked Lennon, working out the best way to kill him. On the 7th of December, Chapman in some form of derangement accosted the folk singer James Taylor, and explained to him how he was going to be doing great things with John Lennon. He soon purchased a copy of the Catcher in the Rye and wrote a message. It was addressed to Holden Caulfield, writing that this is my statement and signing it Holden Caulfield. On the morning of the 8th of December, Chapman made his way to the Dakota building where Lennon lived with Yoko and their young son Sean. Chapman would spend most of the day near the entrance of the Dakota building, along with a number of fans. Chapman was able to meet Sean Lennon, who had been on a morning walk with Lennon's housekeeper, reportedly shaking the boy's hand and calling him a beautiful boy, in reference to the song about the child. At around 5 AM, John and Yoko left the building to go and record Ono's song Walking on Thin Ice. As the couple were heading to their limousine, Chapman approached and held out a copy of Lennon's album Double Fantasy for Lennon to sign. Lennon then asked if there was anything else he could do for Chapman before driving away. This moment was even captured on photograph. At 10 PM, John and Yoko returned and they went to enter their home, but Chapman was still waiting around. Yoko walked ahead, and as John was entering, Chapman drew his gun and entered a combat stance. He emptied all 5 bullets, 4 of which hit John Lennon in the back. The bullets damaged his lung and the arteries just above his heart. And strangely, Chapman did not flee. He simply took out his copy of Catcher in the Rye and began reading. He continued to do so until the police arrived on the scene, and then he was calmly arrested. Once Chapman had been handcuffed and put in the back of the police car, Yoko Ono came over to see the man who had just shot her husband. She looked at Chapman, but did not say anything to him. It was clear to the officers on the scene that Lennon had lost far too much blood. There was no time to wait for an ambulance, so instead, Lennon was placed into the back of a police car and rushed to the Roosevelt Hospital. Yoko Ono followed in a separate car. Upon arriving at the hospital, Lennon was carried from the police car onto a stretcher. His vitals were poor, he was not breathing, and he had no pulse. Lennon had passed out in the back of the car and did not regain consciousness. Attempts were made by a number of ER doctors to resuscitate him, but the internal damage was too great. Chapman had used hollow point rounds, meaning there was massive damage to Lennon's vital arteries around his heart. 3 of the 4 bullets that hit Lennon had exited through his chest, whilst the 4th had become lodged in a vital artery near his heart. Although the medical team attempted for a good 20 minutes or so, there was nothing that could be done. At 11:15 PM, John Lennon was pronounced dead. It was reported that the Beatles song All My Loving was playing at the time. His cause of death was listed as massive blood loss. Yoko returned to the Dakota building to tell young Sean of his father's death. Although she requested that the media not be informed of Lennon's death before she had been able to speak to her son, the death was leaked to the media. When Gloria Chapman saw the news, she immediately realized it was her husband who was responsible. On the 9th of December, Yoko announced that instead of a funeral for her husband, there was to be a vigil where she invited those who wished to pray for John as he had done for them. On the 14th of December, millions of people around the world took up Yoko's invitation and held a silence in remembrance of John Lennon. Nearly 250,000 people attended a vigil in Central Park. On the 6th of January 1981, Chapman appeared before the courts and was charged with second-degree murder. Mark Chapman, ignoring his lawyer's advice to plead not guilty by the way of insanity, pled guilty. He was sentenced to 20 years to life imprisonment. He has been denied parole almost a dozen times and has attempted to show remorse. He has since admitted that he was wrong to attempt fame by murdering Lennon, choosing the quick and damaging way he did. He now claims to have found Jesus to help him see the error of his ways. His wife Gloria is still married and continues to visit Mark for conjugal visits. In 1985, a section of Central Park near the Dakota building was designated as Strawberry Fields. in homage to the song written by Lennon. At its heart is a mosaic, within it a single word: imagine. It has since become a place for Lennon fans to visit, pay respects, and lay flowers. To this day, it is a place where fans will gather on special occasions, such as John Lennon's birthday or the anniversary of his assassination. Chapman's motivations for the murder of John Lennon appear to be heavily driven by the desire to become famous. His initial desire to murder a number of celebrities before settling on Lennon and his insistence that it was not personal do point to this. The fascination with capture in the Rye cannot be ignored, as it would appear Chapman saw himself in the character of Caulfield. By killing John Lennon, Mark Chapman ultimately succeeded in his goal. Lennon became famous for his role in one of history's biggest bands, his often outspoken remarks, and his contribution to popular culture. Chapman was able to force himself into John Lennon's story by being the one who ended his life, thereby leeching fame and infamy from this act. It is not possible to discuss the life and death of John Lennon without noting Chapman's impact. However, we should instead focus on Lennon's contribution to the world. Whilst there is no doubt as to the criticism that can be leveled at the man, John Lennon will remain one of the 20th century's most important figures. His music will live on, outshining the act that ended his life, and the man who sought fame in the most despicable of ways.